person having a seat with me in this episode is David Osit, a filmmaker. You may have heard of him before. He had a film called The Mayor. And most recently, he's been working on a project called Predators. It's a film which essentially takes a look at the predator investigations I've done from the very beginning, the impact that they have had, and ask some pointed questions about a lot of issues related to the predator investigations. David, thank you for being with me.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Let me ask you right off the top, what made you decide to take on this film, to
Yeah.
do this project?
Well, I grew up watching your show, and a lot of people my age did. I was in college. I remember watching it in my dorm room, just being enraptured and enthralled by what I was seeing. This is not the first time you've heard this, but no one had seen anything like it before, and it felt really special. I've heard you say the phrase, "You took people inside the commission of a felony," and that's such a perfect way to put it, but it really did make you feel like you were inside of something that you didn't have a right to be inside of. It was just so unique. And I remember watching that with my college dorm mates, and we would our mouths would be hanging open, or we would laugh, or we would just be, like, stunned. Um this was also around the age where, the internet was a scary place.
Sure.
And
Still is.
it's still even more so now, perhaps. But it was a scary place, but also kind of a place where only certain people were scared. Because only certain people knew what was out there. And for some people, it was just kind of, okay, well, it's the internet. It's just it's the place where you can get information. But this wasn't a place where a lot of people understood what the risks were. And you highlighted those.
You approach this from a very personal angle. And I don't want to intrude on something that impacted you, but you bring this up in the film and you told me about this in the course of asking me to participate. And I should say that, we participated fully and, with open arms in this project. What happened? What was your experience as a survivor, as much as you want to get into detail, that led you to look at this film through a certain lens?
To be completely honest, when I first set out to make the film, I wasn't looking at it through any lens of my own. I kind of thought, well, to get back to your question, I was thinking, this show was, this fundamental thing. This is really a fundamental part of culture. I kind of years went on, I had forgotten about it. Not forgotten about it, but it wasn't like at the front of my
No,
mind.
but you move on and you live your
It
life.
was a show. It was a
Right.
show on TV, and it wasn't even like a show like The Sopranos or The Simpsons or South Park or something where it's like these new seasons in the same way. It was something that felt like it was part of this moment in history, this incredible moment in history. And then years later, I went on the internet one day and found all of the subreddits and the message boards that are full of people who still watch the show, still talk about the show, still ask each other questions about the show, still meet up and have conversations about the show. And that's what really amazed me because in the process of that, of seeing those communities, I saw some of the footage that they had found, some of this raw footage that I had never seen before, that a lot of people had never seen before, that came from, 15, 20 years of these, dedicated fans of the show doing FOIA requests or, getting info from depositions or watching live footage, raw feeds from NBC cameras from years past. And watching that raw footage was like, wow, this show is really remarkable, not only for the stories it tells, but for the stories it doesn't. What was it like to actually do that kind of work? And I kept thinking about what the Decoys experience would be like. This is all before I even had the idea to make a film. I was like, what would it be like to be an 18-year-old, 19-year-old playing an underage kid? You're basically almost the same age as some of these kids on the show that are, purported to be. And what would it be like to actually be involved in doing some of that? Like, how would that affect you? How would that change your outlook, especially if, like, you're a young actor or an actress? And so my first idea was, let's just talk to the Decoys, and that's how I started filming, and then it really snowballed from there. I just became this interest of what was it like to make a show like this?
What was your most surprising takeaway from interviewing our on-site decoys? And we had a number of them. Some are well known, some are lesser known. They all did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always impressed. Now we use decoys who are affiliated with law enforcement for a lot of different reasons. But what was your biggest takeaway from those decoys?
It's a good question. I felt that, like you say, they have very different experiences. Some of them look back on the show. with such incredible passion and excitement that they were involved in it. Some of them look back on the show with a bit of regret, thinking that they wish that they felt like they weren't exposed to some of the things that they were exposed to. All of them, though, truly felt like they were doing great work with you and loved work and felt taken care of. No one felt untaken care of that I spoke to during the process of
Mhm.
making the show. And a lot of people were, just thinking about how it felt like a different chapter in their lives. I think also everybody looks back on this time as being a more innocent time, which I find so remarkable to think about.
Well, it is. I mean, I remember in the third investigation in Riverside, California, where 51 guys showed up. I mean, it's all shocking. People ask, what was the most disturbing situation? I said it's about a thousand-way tie for first. But it was in that particular investigation when I thought, holy hell, 51 guys in 3 days. What's going on out there? And you can't bring it back once you're committed to do these investigations. You do them, as you know. We spent a lot of time together on this. That it's evolved into what we call takedown now on True Blue, and it airs in other places like Fox News as well. But it it was shocking that there was that much of it going on, and that these guys were so willing to engage in this discussion with a decoy or anybody else.
Yeah, it really is. And it remains shocking that it continues. And I think that was something that I definitely wondered about for myself and for other people is, well, how does this keep happening? Can we stop it? I've heard you say, that one of the reasons these types of shows and the work that you do is so popular and also true crime in general is so popular, it's biblical. These are biblical
Yeah,
stories. They're stories of good
good
people.
versus evil.
Absolutely. And if it's a biblical story, does that mean that we can do anything to stop?
Right.
Is it just human beings at a certain point just doing awful things and we can't do anything about it? Like we try to stop it, we try to educate people, and it's a depressing thought, but it's one I can't really let enter my head too much because I like to think that we're making progress and we're trying to get these men to stop doing these things. Part of it, though, was me thinking about, well, how does this happen in the first place? And we talked about that. And that's definitely a question that's haunted me my whole life is what are the circumstances at play in the world that enable this to happen? And is the only way to deal with it just by catching these guys and putting them in prison? Is there something else that we're missing? I would love to know the answer if there is. I wish I knew. But a lot of the film is me trying to go on that journey of figure out what else can we do to actually stop this from happening.
What else can we do?
I've started to understand that we all have an issue when it comes to the way we look at the world. And I'll say this, it would be the most unpopular thing in the world for me to stand here or sit here and say, uh, you've got to try to find the humanity in someone who can do the most awful thing you can do in the world. It is a really, really hard sell to try to get someone to say, hey, imagine that maybe someone does something like this because they themselves were victimized, because then they themselves feel powerless. And this is a way to get power in an awful way over a child. All these different psychological reasons that this might manifest. And a predator might become a predator for certain reasons that they even themselves were preyed on. All these different reasons it can happen. But it is a cycle. There's definitely a cycle going on here. The cycle starts somewhere, and I'm not sure where it ends, but I know that it's not ending.
I've always thought, and I get asked this all the time, and I talk to shrinks, I talk to law enforcement, I talk to the decoys, and I think there's a tendency in society to want to make these guys one guy. They're stone cold pedophiles, predators, and they should be locked up forever. Some states have capital punishment. Some states, like Louisiana, actually have castration in severe cases. But they're not the same guy. They're the younger guys, opportunists, socially inept, who get caught up in the moment. And they blur this line between an 18-year-old and a 14 or 15-year-old. There are the guys who are professionals, a lawyer, a teacher, a rabbi, who are wired this way, but wouldn't maybe act out on it without the internet. Then you do have the stone cold
Yeah.
pedophile.
It's all a huge range of people, and they all are treated the same way.
I've been investigating predators going after our children for more than 20 years. But did you know there are also predators who may be going after your own home, your biggest investment? Just think about this. When was the last time you checked your home title? That's the legal record proving that you own your home. If the answer is never, then this is for you. Scammers are stealing titles and your equity is the target. It happens all the time. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee to your county, and just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. That's why I have partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. It's frightening how frequently this happens. Use my promo code Hansen at HometitleLock.com and you'll get a free title history report. Plus, you'll get a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's a 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes. And if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HometitleLock.com and use promo code Hansen. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code Hansen, Hansen. We have it on our home. You should too. One of the reveals in the film is that you yourself are a survivor. How did that shape your look at this and go as deeply as you feel comfortable into what happened and how that impacted your decision to make this film? Um, but did you in some ways go on your own quest for justice and to understand why somebody would do something like that to you?
I'll say this, and as a side note, it's something I'm hoping a lot of people don't know before they see the film, because I think that when you watch the film and then you understand
Well, you
this.
revealed it to me
Oh, of course,
in the course of our
of
interview.
course,
Yeah,
but I mean in the sense of when people watch the film, and
yeah.
there's something that happens, I think, when we realize that there's a personal motivation
Mhm.
to do something, and it changes the way we see people. The moment in the film where I talk about what happened to me, uh, it's pretty deep into the film, and I think it's at a point where you're maybe wondering, what is this guy
Where's he going?
motivated by?
Where's he going with
Where
this? Yeah.
what motivates someone to ask these questions, to get to the bottom of this, to even spend some time with some of the people I spend time with. I spend some time with some of the, let's call them amateur predator hunters, people who are following your example, but doing it on social media. And there's many of them, as you know. Uh, so I think that in that moment when I'm when I'm kind of revealing some of my own experience to the audience, it's in the context of something that I started to realize as I was making the film, which is that I think that we're all trying to figure out what kind of world we live in. And I wish more documentaries, I wish more media had a big thought bubble above it, telling an audience, why the heck did this person make this?
Right.
What was their quote unquote agenda?
Well, I could tell you this. It is very rare that I'm out in public, not working. When somebody doesn't come up to me and say, "Hey, look, can I talk to you for a minute?" Yeah. Or, uh, this happened to me. I've been carrying this around for a long time, whether they've had therapy or not, or whether the person faced justice or not. They seem to get some solace, some control back with every bad guy that we expose and who gets locked up.
Look, 1,000%. That is the reality. And that's something I think is something I start to unpack a bit in the film, is that this stuff can make you feel better.
Yeah.
It can make you feel better to see someone get what they deserve, what you think they deserve, what other people think they deserve. It can make you feel better. It can make you feel healed to see someone else experience some pain if you've experienced pain too. And I know that's true for me. I know that's true for lots of people. That's just like a way we are as human beings. It's part of who we are. We have a sort of uh, two switches as human beings. This is my theory. We have two switches. We have a cruelty switch and an empathy switch. We have a switch where we're going to care about somebody that we don't know, and we're going to try to put ourselves in their shoes. And we have a switch where we want to just kind of see someone who deserves the pain get that pain. And those switches go up and down depending on who we are, what stuff we're dealing with, and who we're talking about.
You talk about the amateur or vigilante predator
Yeah.
and catchers, and I get asked this all the time. And I catch a lot of heat for my view on this, which is, for the most part, the cases they expose don't get prosecuted. Some do, and some are considered responsible by law enforcement
Mhm.
and have taken those leads and made successful cases and
Correct.
prosecutions. You've got a guy like Vitali who, it's like Borat catches predators. I mean, it's the goofiest clown show that you ever see, in my opinion. And then you've got the fellow who you talked to. What was your impression of what he's doing? Does it do any good for society? Is it a copycat? Is he well-meaning? Is he trying to get clicks and clout? I mean, not what I think. I want to know what you think. After
Yeah,
you spent some time with him
I did, and, I think.
and his whole cadre of characters that goes out with him.
Sure, and I have a different answer for all those questions.
Yeah.
Let's start with, is it what are his intentions? I think everybody believes in what they're doing. As a general rule in life, I think everybody believes that what they are doing is good. So it's almost a moot question in that sense. I genuinely believe that he thinks that he's doing good work by going out there and catching bad guys and putting them on blast and trying to ruin their lives. I really think that he believes in what he's doing. I think a lot of people who do this for a living really believe that what they're doing is a good thing. I think they also have another switch, and I really don't think that anyone would disagree. It's hard to imagine someone disagreeing. They're also like, well, yeah, I can do this and also make a profit. That's great. I get to do two things at once. I get to do good and I get to make money doing it. In a certain sense, if I'm being really honest with myself, am I that different as a filmmaker? I'm
Yeah,
I
I get paid for my work,
I'm doing good
you know?
work. I think I'm doing good work. I think I've made valuable films. I think that, the last film I made was, it took place in the West Bank and it was before all this crisis, but it's
Sure.
about valuing
Yeah.
human
Well,
lives.
you
And
see
it's
how important it is, especially after what's gone on for the past 2
absolutely, it's
years.
really important and it's valuable stuff. And you do great work. We also do it for a living. We also have a nice home. We also provide for our family. We do it by doing this good work. We have to make that good work better, more appealing, and get more audiences to be able to make that work better. So, again, maybe it goes back to this two switches thing, but am I that different than him? In some ways. Am I that different from other content creators? In some ways, maybe I am, but it's really up to forces that are beyond my understanding as to how different we are. I do think that I wouldn't do what he does. I would have a hard time doing what he does for a living. I think it would tax me. And one of the things I felt while I was filming some of those things, because I went on certain things
Sure.
with him, it felt very challenging for me emotionally. It felt bizarre to me to not be able to figure out what the end goal is aside from simply embarrassment. There to not be any sort of legal consequence or any sort of potential end result for some of the things that would happen. But I understood also that that wasn't what his idea of justice was. His idea of justice, if I can paraphrase for him, is, I think, in the public square, is get justice where people will give it to you and not with police who are too slow to show up and don't want to do what society wants, which is to get these guys forever punished.
You know, around the same time frame that you reached out to me, I was also approached by at least 3 and probably 4 other filmmakers, production companies to do this. And I chose to cooperate with you because of your intellectual integrity and because, we had a good vibe and you were very honest about the whole thing. The one thing I hate, having been in this business for years, is when people, "Hey, you can make some money." Da, 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 da." Well, I didn't ask for money. I don't need money. I have my own network. I have podcasts. I have a lot of things going on. And it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, a truthful story to be told. If somebody's going to do that, I will cooperate. Um, and that's how this came about. And there's another project that more closely focuses on my history, my background, touching on the predator stuff and how all that works. But it's a different project than this. You recently premiered the film at
That's
Sundance.
right.
What was the reaction?
It was a really special
Yeah.
few screenings for
It's
me.
a big deal to be at Sundance, right?
It was a
I
huge
mean,
deal.
they don't take just anybody.
No, it's harder to get into than Harvard. It is a very, very, very rigorous process to get a film into that festival, and even more rigorous once you get there. And I was really, really pleased with the reaction, in part because I think one of the things I was excited about and remain excited about is this is a film that's not just about your investigations. It's not just about what's been spawned from your investigations, but it's about why we like true crime so much, why it appeals to us. And it is like, if you look back, I mean, it is the dominant form of entertainment at
Sure.
this point. That was not the case 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It was not even the case 25 years ago when you or 20 years
There
ago.
there was a point when Dateline was more of a traditional news magazine, there was a point where it was almost canceled.
That's right.
And then there were some breaking news events that brought it back into relevance, and then the Predator show brought it even more into relevance because of
Absolutely.
the To Catch a Predator.
And it
And
changed.
now, these years later, it's a staple
I think it
of
changed
of
the
American
DNA.
viewing.
I think it changed the DNA of modern American viewing. It gave people an understanding that there's a world where you can actually go inside of these crimes, events, and see them from all sides. You have the eyes where you can watch it through the eyes of the police. You can watch it through the eyes of the decoys. You can watch it through the eyes of you. You can even watch it through the eyes of the predator. It's so many ways to be involved in watching these stories, and it's completely changed television in all these ways, but not just television. It's a way to engage with the world around us, and it gives us an idea of what is good and what is evil and who's working on which side.
Do you think that these men would have gone to jail, these stings would have taken place with or without the Predator investigations?
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that because I'm not privy to the
I mean, ICAC and federal government, FBI, local law
yeah.
enforcement, they do these things all the time without us.
I will say, and I would find it impossible to argue with this. I would say that far fewer would have been arrested if not for investigations such as these. Because of course it's active work, right? You're actively doing work to make sure there's people on the internet who are being able to facilitate these conversations happening. And then these men have these conversations. You're looking out for all the ways in which these men can have the right conversation and not be instigating it for the men rather to be instigating the sexual conversation, to do all the things in a
You
textbook
don't
way.
want to create an environment where there's entrapment.
Of course
So
not.
you can't.
And not only that, you don't wanna open yourself up to, unfair criticism. So you've gotta do this in a way, but you've got resources to do that, right? And you got people, as in the case of To Catch a Predator, you had volunteers. In present day case, you've got police departments that are empowered to work on the stings with you and your team, and you're doing things above board, and it makes complete sense that there's more people coming if you've got more work focusing on it. It's
Sure.
an endless supply.
The film is not without criticism. And, I've done this a long time in a lot of different areas. And, I'm comfortable with criticism. I think it's healthy to discuss this. One of the areas is a sting we did back at Dateline in Texas.
Yes, sir.
And an assistant district attorney surfaced in this sting, had discussions with two different um, decoys at that time with perverted justice. And they were sexual in nature. The conversations themselves were allegedly illegal, violating Texas law. He did not show up at the sting house. The local police went out to get him the next day, and he sadly, after trying to get the hard drive out of his computer, pulled out a pistol and shot himself. What do you think led to that suicide? Have you formed any opinions?
I have, yeah. Think a tremendous amount of shame. And a shame so great that I've never known it. And I would never wish that kind of shame on anybody because he reached, in my opinion, not knowing the man. I think he reached a certain level of shame where he had like an animal response. I need to end my life before this gets worse, before what I've done becomes who I am. And in his mind, I imagine there was still a difference between who he was and who he would become if he lived the rest of his life dealing with the shame of what was about to happen.
Do you think the police were wrong to go to his house and arrest him?
Wrong? There's too many details for me to know if they're wrong or not. I don't think that going to anyone's house is wrong. to arrest somebody. I mean, it happens all the time. People do crimes, they get arrested. They get arrested wherever they need to be arrested.
There was a criticism at the time, and I didn't mean to cut you off there. We'll get back into anything you want, but there was a criticism at the time that my crew, Dateline's crew, rushed to have
Oh, I see.
inclusion
I understand what you
to
mean.
to the rest. I have always said I would have rather waited a day
Yeah.
if you're looking at it from just a television standpoint, and I my heart goes out to this man's family, and we'd never want to see anybody take their own lives, obviously. But to me, if you just look at it as a television producer, it's better TV if they go to the DA's office on Monday morning and get
Sure.
up. We had no choice
Sure.
in how they affected the arrest or when they affected the arrest. We were there,
Yeah.
as you know, you've seen the video. But do you think the police acted correctly here?
Look, if you don't go if there's no suicide, then no one would be asking that question. Obviously, the reason that the question comes up in the first place is because the worst possible thing happened. Something extrajudicial happened where he was no longer the legal system was no longer responsible for what happened. The show is no longer able to document what happened. And there's no answers. There's just pain for a surviving family, and for other people probably who are affiliated, or connected. I always think that, like, the sight of 20 people with guns is a scary thing for
Sure it is.
anybody.
It's scary
And
to me,
and that's
and I'm around it.
that's probably what that man looked out his window and saw, because that's the footage that there is. And I think that that's a disturbing thing to probably witness. And I'm sure, I mean, I can't be sure, but I am not unconvinced that that didn't spur some of the fear that he must have felt in that moment.
One of the things that is not in the film that I know to be true, and we've discussed this, is the fact that he had child pornography on that computer, a crime for which he knew as an assistant DA constituted a potential penalty of 10 years per image.
Of course.
And there were multiple images. And I talked to the Texas
Yeah.
Rangers and they confirmed all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't you put that in the film?
I think, first of all, I think
I mean, it gives context as to, and again, nobody can know what was in his mind,
yeah, yeah.
but it does give context to, there was more going on here than just a chat where he was getting
No, of course. Look,
his sexual fantasies
I
fulfilled,
think a lot
talking
of
to a 13-year-old boy or somebody he thought was
a
13.
lot of the men that are caught on your show are also in possession of these images, as
Sure.
you know. And
Serious crime, because
yeah,
every time somebody views one of those images, it's the re-victimization of a child.
and we also have many other instances where we don't talk about it with the other men, because I think we're in the film we're talking kind of about what people in the mass media understood and knew about a situation. I think we're talking about what most civilians knew at the time when this happened. And I think that we're talking about what the people who were involved in the ground knew at this time, which is that this man, for whatever reason, his shame was, for whatever depth it was, great. Whether it's because there was an additional crime that he might have been charged with, or whether there was just the simple crime of doing what he did on the internet and talking to a person. Some of the times, obviously, in your show, there's conversations between people where there's images being passed around. Sure. Now that man doesn't know that they're not illicit images if they're images of a decoy who's above age. As in their minds is also child pornography. But is the crime in the mind, or is the crime in reality? Was what was the interesting question to me. And I think for me, whether or not he had child pornography, I don't know. Does that mean it's more okay that he killed himself? I'm not sure it
Well,
impacted.
I think it goes to the notion that there was more going on with this man than just the fact that he was exposed to a sting. You see what I'm saying? And the other thing that was going on, the other subtext here is that after the fact, authorities found other information on that computer that led to that assisted in a corruption investigation having nothing to do with child
Yeah,
exploitation
yeah,
to this man's boss, who was the
absolutely.
elected DA. So there was more going on there than just the fact that he got busted
I I
in a
could
sting
I
that
couldn't
day.
agree with you more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that there's probably tons of things going on with tons of people who have to date committed suicide, uh, who are caught on this show or on other
Sure.
shows, who commit suicide in general.
Federal investigations, other local
Could be
investigations.
tons of different things. I know there's at this point, I think there's maybe 3 or 4, I don't remember, people who were on the original series of To Catch a Predator who have now since committed suicide. And over the years that grows. Well, that's normal because people
Yeah.
get older, people
No, and I know
depression,
exactly who they are.
alcoholism.
We talk about it, on my other podcast, Predators I've Caught, where we go back
Absolutely.
exactly
So
all this.
there's probably things going on with those people that we
Right.
don't know. They might have also had child. We don't know if they have child pornography, but to me, it's less the point what they have had, what other demons they had, and more what's sad to me is that these wonder why. I wonder why these demons took root in some of these people. I wonder if there's any world where we can feel an obligation to prevent someone from ever getting to that point.
Well, I ask this question all the time
Yep.
of myself
Yeah.
and you know, of the predators I catch.
Mhm.
Every time we had a sting recently in Marion County, Florida, 41 guys surfaced in 6
Yeah.
days. 41 guys from all walks of life,
Yeah.
graduate students, uh, illegal immigrants,
Many fans of the show.
many fans of
Yeah.
the show. One guy who broke down and told me about how he was sexually exploited by elderly neighbors growing up. Now, whether that's a story, whether that's true, it seemed he was sincere. My heart breaks for the guy if that's in fact what happened. I mean, I try to approach these interviews with empathy
Of
and
course.
concern for human beings, but I want to know what the hell made you think that this was an okay thing to do?
Yeah.
And I have not heard an answer that's acceptable to me, and I doubt that I ever
I
will.
don't think you ever will. And I do have a theory why. I'm not sure how much thinking's involved.
I agree. I agree with that.
So I think that's the reason you'll never hear an answer that satisfies you, because I'll never hear an answer that satisfies me. I think it's the same reason. There's not that much thinking involved. A lot of it is becoming, it's just something emerging from someone's brokenness, whether they're broken for other reasons that have to do with them, they themselves being victims, or other reasons related to
Or they're just turned on by a boy or girl
yeah,
who's too young for them.
something broken in them. Maybe they were incels as a kid and they found some safety in the idea of being with a child more so, as disgusting as that is. Like, it's sad. It's sad because no one's born this way, right? No one's born being evil.
I don't know.
You
Do
think
you
some
think that's
people are born?
possible? I wonder sometimes.
Look,
And again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I just occasionally try to ask those poignant questions to the predators I catch and to all criminals and to everybody, with whom I do an interview. It's about getting inside somebody's mind at the end of the day, whether it's a good guy or,
yeah,
a predator. And I don't know that I'll ever get to that point except for the fact that they have this fantasy. I think it's fueled sometimes by child porn. I think child porn becomes very addictive.
mhm.
And at some point, the AI or the child porn doesn't do it for them and they cross this line.
And the taboo of having an attraction to that and being able and having to keep it secret almost can fuel an additional desire at times for certain people. I think, like you say, and like I'm saying, there's tons of different reasons why somebody
Yeah.
would do this. The challenge is, what do we do then?
Well, I think we do what we're doing, which is expose these people and have a greater understanding. I mean, my feeling has always been that your best defense, and you're the father of a young child who's going to want to go on the internet,
Of course.
is the best defense I feel is what you do in your own home. I can do these investigations. You can do these films. Law enforcement can conduct these stings. And if you don't protect your back door, it can still
Well,
impact you because you can't catch them
I'll
all.
tell you one thing that I couldn't agree with you more about, which is the importance of keeping young kids off of social media at a certain age before their brains are fully formed to be
Yeah.
able to make some of their own intelligent, logical decisions, to be able to smell danger on their own, which you can at a certain age, but you can't when you're that young.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing all the time a really corrosive influence of social media on really young minds. And I think that it is not safe for so many reasons. It allows for grooming, which is, of course, as you know, perfect way for a predator to enter a child's life.
Sure.
And
That's how they do it.
you know that not even through these investigations, but through so many of your other investigations about grooming and about, extortion cases that happen overseas that come to the States. Like you are basically one of the experts in our country about this topic. And it's always because people are susceptible at a certain point to grooming, and young minds especially are.
The other criticism that the film levels has to do with one of our investigations, this particular one in Marquette County, Michigan, northern Michigan. And one of the cases, the alleged predator was 18 years old, and the victim was posing as a 14, 15-year-old. Now, theoretically, these two could be in high school together,
Mm,
right? But that wasn't the case here.
mm,
This was a guy who knew the age. And I'm not pretending this is a clear cut situation because we editorially have to decide what do we do about this? I mean, I think if you're talking about, and I don't want to arbitrarily assign numbers to this because, there are so many different variable factors here. But if you got two kids who are in high school,
yeah.
I don't think it's any of our business. If the child is 16, 17, we wouldn't even create that as a potential profile for a decoy. But you did have a case where a legally aged man approached a 14, 15-year-old. He came over, he was arrested. I talked to him. We handled that case a little differently than we would somebody who was older. You interviewed the boy's mom,
Mm,
who is extraordinarily critical of me personally and the franchise,
mm.
as if we ruined, his life or he couldn't go to graduation. Do you think that without us there, his arrest would have still made the newspaper?
Would he be arrested without you there?
They do stings without us. They have in the past.
They did stings
They've done
without you
stings
guys
without
working
me.
out there? Yeah. I wonder. I genuinely wonder if it was in the newspaper because you guys were on
It
that
was in the
stick.
newspaper because everybody got arrested. It would be in the newspaper. I would
Oh, yeah,
say
yeah.
whether or not we were there or
I
not.
think people
It's a
found
big
out
deal.
about it. I think people found out about it mostly though, but I think it was bigger news because you were there, which is the thing we're talking about, right?
Right.
Like you're putting more of attention on this, you're putting more of a spotlight on this, because you've been doing this for years and people know. Like, look, I'll put it this way: if I go on the internet and I see an alert about 46 people caught by Chris Hansen in a recent sting, I'm seeing that article because it's Chris Hansen doing
Right.
the thing.
I understand that.
So in that case, I would say, yeah, I think that made the news, like really made the news because of your presence there, which is understandable, I think.
Do you think the situation was a mother being protective of her son, or do you think that she understood the gravity of his arrest and what happened to him?
I think it was probably both. Not to speak for her, but I think it was probably
Oh, you spent some time with her.
yeah, yeah, but I can't speak for
No,
her
I understand,
personally.
and I'm not trying to
But
get
but I but I but I think it was probably both. I think that she was a mother trying to protect her son. And I think it was also a situation of her understanding the gravity of the situation. It's also a situation like
it's a small town too,
it's also like you pointed out, it's a gray area situation. I believe your colleague during the course of this happening was pointing out that if we were in just a different state, one state over, it wouldn't have even been a crime, technically. 15, 18 in a different state, not as much of a, it's not
Right.
even,
No, it's true, and again, as much as we are embedded to tell this story, and I think it's important for people to know, we don't make decisions on who comes over.
sure. Of course.
People decide to come
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
See this on the internet all the time on various social media platforms. How come you don't get more white guys? How come you don't get more black guys?
Or
How come
women.
we don't
Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
these
Of
people.
course.
These people choose us.
Mhm.
And once they make that decision, whether or not they get prosecuted is out of our hands.
Mm,
That's a decision for law enforcement and a decision for the prosecutors in that particular county,
yes. Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a parent of a young child,
Yeah.
how did this experience shape what you do as a parent and what you will do? Because your child is young.
Yes.
3?
Yeah. Three. Yeah.
Long way to go.
Long way to go.
Goes by fast.
I'm sure.
Mine are 30, 33, and 31, so I know how
Yeah.
fast it goes.
I Like I was saying earlier, if there's one thing that I've truly internalized, it is just there's stuff that we see, that children see, are exposed to on the internet that it doesn't make sense in a normal world for them to be seeing and exposed to. It's just not natural. The level of access to a very scary adult world that a child today can have on the internet. And not only that, but to their psyche, to their sense of self. There's nothing more there. If okay, think of it this way: there's nothing more vulnerable than a baby, right? On the internet, there's nothing more vulnerable than an adolescent. Like it is the most fertile space for someone to groom them, to take advantage of them, to create a power dynamic where they want to then try to have sex or sexual power over that child, to bully them. We don't
Sextortion. We've got a
sextortion.
documentary going on that.
Bullying leads to depression. Bullying leads to incel behavior. Bullying leads to all these sorts of dynamics where you then want to get power for yourself. We have people in our film who talk about how they got into being predators because they themselves were preyed on. We have people in our film who got into catching predators because they themselves were preyed on. That's what I mean by they're all this awful cycle that we're all kind of inside of.
What is the most important takeaway you want viewers to have?
So fun. So funny that it's meatless because it's my least and it's not your fault. It's my least favorite question
Right.
ever because the one thing
Well, you've been immersed in this for 2 years now.
but the one kind of the thing I love most about being a filmmaker as opposed to being just a straight up journalist is that I feel like my job is to leave you with complexity, to leave you with complicated ideas. There's stuff in my film that I don't agree with. There's stuff in my film that I do agree with. There's parts of me in the movie, as you talked about with me. There's parts of other sort of stories that are complicated. There's lots of gray area. I like to think that this film takes you on a roller coaster. It starts very differently than it ends. You're going to find yourself hating me. You're going to find yourself agreeing with me. You're going to find yourself hating the people in the film and then agreeing with them. I like that energy. I don't think in our world we have enough media that makes us think for ourselves as opposed to just sitting down and watching a documentary or watching a piece of journalism where you know how you feel at the beginning and you know how you feel at the end. So it's the one question that I kind of love that I don't have to answer because I know that for me, it's the journey, not the destination with this particular film.
Well, for your most disliked question, I think you gave a very good answer. Do you think we should keep doing these predator investigations?
You know, I really like your recent investigations. I think that you've kind of nailed the formula. You work with police departments. You are not using actors as decoys and potentially giving them any sort of trauma by being attached in these situations. I think that you are following the lead of law enforcement, in fact, which is a different circumstance than some of the other people who do this for a living, certainly. And I feel like it's within the context of a system that's trying to do something about this problem. I think that these investigations, though, aren't investigations as much anymore as they used to be. I think they're a recurring segment for a program that you have, which is a very valuable program and it's very valuable information. And the data that you've collected over these years is so important. I mean, you've done things that sociologists and psychologists can't do by having these conversations with these men, and you've done a public service. But is it an investigation anymore? I'm not sure.
It's an enterprise. It's enterprise reporting, I think.
Yes.
That's the best way I
Yeah.
could put it.
And there's always room for that.
David Osit, thank you for having a seat with me. Where can people see the film?
The film is going to be premiering in theaters starting September 19th in New York City, and then September 26th in LA, and the rest of the country shortly to follow. And it'll then be streaming on Paramount Plus in November.
Well, good for you. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time, Chris. Thank you so much, not only for letting us film with you and for spending time with you, but for your openness. I mean, there are lots of people who uh, would close down if asked hard questions. There's people who would not be curious, and I genuinely admire your curiosity, your openness to talk about some of these challenging parts of the way our ecosystem works when it comes.
Well, if it was easy, everybody could do it,
Yeah. Yeah,
Same with your filmmaking.
I think so.
All right. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
David Osit, thank you. And thank you for also having a seat with us. We'll see you on the next episode of Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. I'll be watching and listening.